let's get going. My name is Ian Horvath. I'm the new president of Portland Urban Beekeepers for 2022. So hello, and I look forward to going through this with you guys in 2022, and hopefully in person at some point. We can get back to there, but we'll stay on Zoom for a little bit. Tonight, we're going to have Paul Stromberg from the Portland Metro Beekeepers, so one of our sister beekeeping clubs. Excited to have, I think you're the vice president over there, talking about queen rearing. So really excited for that. We'll start off with a few housekeeping items and some stuff that we're going to be doing in 2022, a few little changes, and we'll hand it over to Glenn for a pollen and nectar report, and then we'll go on to Paul for the main event. So just want to say thank you to the old board that served for the last 2 years with Cheryl and everyone else. I know you guys worked really hard in accommodating the massive change when we went from in-person to virtual, and I know that was not easy. So thank you for leading the way and preparing us and making things a little easier. Here is the new board. So myself, and then Jana is also helping me as the vice president. Brian as a treasurer, the communicator is Jess, our librarian is going to be Katie, education and B school will be Susie, our member at large is Carl, and then apiary manager out at Green Acres is Bruce. So a little shameless plug. We'd love if you would become a member. If you're not a member already, there are several benefits to becoming a member. You get added to our swarm list. In 2021, we had over 100 calls on that swarm list. So that's kind of exciting that if you are on the list, you're actually most likely going to get a call, if not 2 calls. If you're at the top of that list, we have our Bee Buddy program, which we started a year or 2 ago. It's an online map where you can see the mentors and the mentees of the learners around you and connect with them and kind of bring that in-person feeling back to our virtual meetings. Bee days. So these were called work parties in the past. That sounded really scary to us. So to try to encourage new beekeepers to feel comfortable coming out to the apiary, we're calling them bee days now. And Bruce and I and Tim over at Green Acres are going to meet soon to go over what we're going to be doing in 2022. So we'll be outlining it by month and giving you more of a schedule to encourage more people to go out there. So that'll be really exciting. I'll share that update in February when we meet. We also have the library, which you can rent books and candle molds and DVDs and a ton of other stuff. We have the equipment rental, which is our extractors, our refractometer, observation hive, frame jig, bee vacuum. We've got all sorts of stuff there. You can post on our website classifieds. We've cleaned those up. Some of them are really old, but now they're all current. And then also, and most importantly, is that your $25 membership mainly goes towards funding additional bee research. So in 2021, we donated $20,000 to $10,000 to Anthony Andoni from the OSU Native Bee and a Bee Atlas project, and then also Ramesh Sagili down there at OSU as well. So that was really awesome. I'm glad we were able to use those funds and give them to people who are doing some really interesting stuff at bee research. So going into the Bee Buddy program, just for those who are not familiar with it, like I said, it's a mentor and a learning program. So if you want to become a part of it, you go onto our website and you can either find a mentor or another new beekeeper to partner up with, and you guys can learn together. So when you go on the website, you'll see this map and you can click on any one of these points. And when you do click on it, it'll come up with that person's information. It'll tell you if they're a mentor or if they want to learn with you. And then you can scroll down through this, but there's a bunch of other information about the mentor, the other person, how many years they've been beekeeping, what they're interested in doing in beekeeping, their address, you have contact information. So it's really just to try to get us to connect together and get more connection between us all and get everybody learning together, because I think we all have a lot to learn from each other, even if you're a new beekeeper. So how do you do that? Well, go to the website, click on resources, and then the Bee Buddy map. And then you click on this form. And from there, you'll just have to fill out your information, you submit it, and then we just manually review it really quickly. And then we'll add it to the list and then you'll show up on the little map over here. So kind of fun. Oh yeah, I actually have a link for it. I'll drop it in the chat for everybody. So got B-Buddy. Something we did last year, I don't remember how widely we advertised it, but I wanted to throw it out there again this year, is that we're offering an OSU scholarship. So OSU has two programs, the OSU Master Beekeeping Program, and then the Oregon Master Melitology Program. Master Beekeeping Program is pretty self-explanatory. I believe several of the members of Pub are in it already. It's a 2 or 3, maybe even 4-year program where you start off as apprentice and journeyman and keep going higher and higher. And you have a mentor there, another beekeeping mentor. They help you through things. The program is fairly comprehensive and you really learn a lot. The Oregon Master Melitology Program is similar, but is for native bees. And it's a large group of volunteers who go out into the state of Oregon and collect native bees. So you go out and you do field collections, then you pin them up afterwards and try to identify them. And OSU uses that research because you're recording the plant, the location you find it, and the type of bee. And they use that data to feed into helping protect native bees and helping influence policy. So that's really interesting program. I did the first year of it last year. So if you're awarded these grants, each of these programs is about $300 for the year. So we're going to be giving out 2 of these scholarships based off need this year. And in order to qualify, you have to perform 3 speaking engagements or assist in 3 public service activities on behalf of Pub. So there's this next slide on how to apply for it. So email me at president@Portland Urban Beekeepers by January 18th. Our board meetings are the 3rd Wednesday of each month. So this is right before that 3rd Wednesday. And then we will review all the submissions during that board meeting. And we'll decide on who we'd like to select, the 2 people we'd like to select. And then we'll announce it in the February meeting. So I have all this as well. I can drop into chat, but for that email, in that email, I should say, we want to include these questions and your answers. So what got you interested in beekeeping or bees? And why do you want to join the Oregon Master Beekeepers or Melitology program? How are your study of the bee biology or beekeeping contribute to your short and long-term goals, right? And does your current workload schedule allow you to support Pub's education efforts? So that's just asking, are you really going to be able to do 3 speaking events or in person, public service? And then why are you a good candidate to receive this Pub scholarship? So I hope you guys apply for this. I think both of those programs are really interesting. And I'm excited that we can actually help support some people go through them. All right. Another plug for B School. B School 2022 is starting up next month, I believe. So Susie is going to be teaching that again. We've had a lot of interest in the last year and 2 when we've done these. It's designed for the beginner beekeeping, but I went back and watched a few of the recorded episodes, and I think they're super fascinating, even having keeping bees for several years. Susie's an amazing educator online like that. And yeah, she gives a lot of detailed information, a lot of practical information on how to keep bees. It's in conjunction with Dewey Caron's Honeybee Biology and Beekeeping book. So that's really cool as well. When you sign up for the classes, you actually get a discount on the book, and the book is only $40. So when you sign up, there will be an option you can select for the book as well. It's 4 2-hour live lessons with Susie. So that's 8 hours total, plus in person with Dewey and Susie at Green Acres at the apiary. So it's a lot of value for $45. You get those 4 classes and in person with them. They are natural teachers and love to share this information. And kind of looping everything together, if you want to supercharge that experience doing B School, why don't you go sign up for the Bee-Buddy map at the same time and find somebody to do it with you, and you guys can learn together. And I have a link for you there too, if you want to look at that. All right. There's the bee school dates and the subjects. So February 17th, we're going to be looking at intro to beekeeping, equipment, obtaining bees, installing and caring for your bees. March 10th, spring management, honeybee biology, breeding frames and evaluating the bees. I think that's really interesting for a beginning beekeeper. Varroa mites management, honey nectar flow, dearth. April, honey harvest, robbing, queen events, disease and pest management, IPM strategies, super interesting stuff to dive into. And then as we wrap up the season, fall and winter management, feeding protein and carbohydrates, and mite management and dead out autopsies. So those 2 hours for each of those, and they are packed full of information. So, and if you miss one because you joined in March or something like that, they are recorded. You can go back and rewatch the ones that you missed. So, like I said, we renamed work parties to bee days. So bee days at the apiary, they'll be starting up in March or April, all weather dependent. All experience levels are welcome. We're really trying to model this as a teaching apiary and getting as many people as we can involved out there. We're really trying to increase our partnership with Tim over Green Anchors this year, and he has a lot more hives that he's willing to let us learn with and go into, as well as our own. I mean, OSU is doing research projects out there, so there's a lot of beekeeping related things going on out there already, and we're just trying to become more part of that. So, like I said, we're looking to grow and expand. And really looking for a scope of topics for things that you would like to learn and see out there. Are you a new beekeeper and you want to just learn what it is to get into a hive? Are you an experienced beekeeper and you'd like to try queen rearing out there or something else? So yeah, any topics or suggestions you have, contact Bruce. He is our apiary manager. You can email him at apiary@portlandurbanbeekeepers.com. That's my last link that I'll drop in chat for everybody. All right. And then I think each month we'll just do a quick little what we should be doing or what we may want to do in that month for beekeeping. So for January, we're not doing much physical hands-on beekeeping, but we can still be preparing and doing stuff like that. So, I always like to reflect on how my 2021 or my past beekeeping season went. What did I do well? What did I want to improve on? Always things like I have a really long list of goals when I start the season, and then I only get to half of them. So, what I should focus on versus not do. And I start building equipment. If you're ordering your equipment, this is a great time to do it because you're not beekeeping and being prepared for the season instead of being called for a swarm and not having that extra hive that you wanted to have built. Then now is the time to prepare for it. What are your plans and goals for 2022? Are you looking just to keep your bees through the summer without them dying? Are you, wanting to raise your own queens? You want to produce for honey, your splits? And then if your bees are not going to make it through the winter, or maybe you're just starting this year, are you looking to order bees? Are you looking just to go with swarms? And have you signed up for our swarm list? So we do have a swarm list. And then, do you want a mentor, another Bee Buddy to learn with in the upcoming season? You can always sign up for the Bee Buddy program to make that work together. All right, kind of coming to the end here. So upcoming speakers. So we have Paul today for the queen rearing. In February, we have Dr. Leo Shrashkin on horizontal hives. And then in March, we're having Alistair McKenzie on swarms, log hives, and bee lining in the Pacific Northwest. I think that'll be really interesting. I want to make sure that everybody is getting value out of these speakers and everything. So if you have topics or suggestions and speakers that you want to hear at the club, please feel free to email me. I'm always open to taking any of those. So, and Glenn, you are up. If you're ready, I can stop sharing and you can take it away.
Okay. Am I on now?
Not yet.
I mean, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Are you just in live time dropping those things, those links into the chat?
Oh, yeah. I actually copied them out beforehand and pasted them in. So I
wondered if you were just dragging and dropping in there or something. I thought that's pretty slick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Then I need to start my show here.
Yep. Looks
Okay.
good.
We're
We
all
can see
ready
it.
then?
Yep.
Okay. Let me see where I'm going here. Well, this is the shortest presentation of the year because there's not much that's going on. I'm trying to get this out of my, I'm seeing something here that I want to get rid of.
Is it the little bar? The
Yeah, at the top there.
we don't see it. So if it
Okay.
doesn't
All right.
bother you, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I looked at my power bill or statement from last month here, just to continue what I've been doing for the last 8 years here. And we see that there's not any major changes here in the last 4 years there. It looks like the 35 degrees is probably statistically different. But, you know, it's right there where it's always been. So this ended before our colder weather towards the end of December. But still, it just gives you an idea of where we're going there, where it was here. So here's one lesson for today. And the reason that we put mouse guards on is to prevent this. But mostly for me, I just can't deal with these little guys in the bottom of my hive. I mean, I tried to save them and they perished during the night. But anyway, that's why we use mouse guards. And on a little lighter level here, as my mom would kind of say, I'll give you a little background here. I'm one of 4 boys. I have 3 brothers. And of course, I have a lot of cousins and whatnot. And mom would say when they would bring a boy or a girl home, she would say this, but not in this context. And I got this little cartoon from one of my hive hosts. I have maybe a dozen or so places around Northeast here where I have bees, but this is, so she sent me this little one and I thought that's pretty good there. But it just reminds me of my mom because she would say, you know, oh yeah, she's a keeper. But okay, anyway, on we go for the few plants that are blooming this time of year. Maybe the only annual flower that we might find is borage. I did see some last month blooming. I haven't been out enough to see if it survived the cold weather. I haven't seen a live bee in, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, flying around the hive. The hellebores will be coming out soon if they're not out already in some cases. No bulbs. Oh, excuse me, no bulbs in January, but well, here we're starting to I see in January of 19 that some of the crocuses were coming up, but I doubt that's going to happen this year. Come along my neighborhood sidewalk, and then this wonderful display in Wilshire Park. Just love that. It'll be nice with humming with bees too, if we get warm enough weather. A few vine plants, winter jasmine, and then also the winter honeysuckle. Maybe in some locales it already is blooming. This is one of the at least 2 plants that can bloom every month of the year here, and other members of the Crucifera family if you let them go to seed. And you know, based upon what we're seeing here, you know, with some pollen, that's nice. The first fruit tree appears in March, which is the Asian pears. They're always the earliest. Berries. Notice that's a mason bee, not a honeybee. A few shrubs. I guess I put heaths and heathers in this one. And then all these types of, or these cousins of the, this Arthur Menzies here, but it's a Mahonia. And I wish I had a whole field of these. Everybody should have one in there. Every beekeeper at least should have one in their yard, because until we had the snow and cold weather, I would see bees on this, even when it was in the upper 30s, if the sun was out. And when the bees aren't out, the hummingbirds will still be visiting it. Another type is this, another cultivar is this Charity, which is also a Mahonia cross. They're not native to Oregon. They're just a cousin to the Oregon grape, but they're originally from China. There's the Mahonia aquifolium. And I'll see bees on that too, but nothing like on the Arthur Menzies and Charity. There's just not very many things blooming in January, December and January. So it's very nice to have that. Viburnums are a pretty good source. I mean, they're a very hardy and robust and reliable bloomer. I think they're underappreciated. Few trees, particularly the filberts if you're from Oregon, otherwise they're hazelnuts, and very early source of pollen. The catkins there. Another nice shot from Steve. Cesara, I have yet to see bees on them, but I've had reports that the bees will just swarm with them. It's a very skinny looking tree, but lots of blooms, as you can see. And I'm going to be paying closer attention starting next month to see if I can get a photo with bees on it. Or if you do, please send them to me. Red alder, the catkins there, source of pollen. Big leaf maple will start in March, a wonderful source. And really all maples. Even the Norway maple, even though it's a nuisance plant now. No herbs, no cover crops will be blooming in this first quarter, and dandelions certainly will. And if you consider borage a weed, then so be it. Shows up twice in this one here too. So the blooms or the photos that I post on the Bridgetown Bees website is by month. So you'll get a few more or you'll get a lot more for many months. But these are some of the highlights for the months of January, February, and March. But so it's a bigger display there at the website. Oh, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have you back once a quarter. That'll be great. See you back in Q2. So
right on.
Yeah. All right, Paul, welcome. And thanks for coming to speak with us today. You are on, my friend.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you, Ian, and thank you, Glenn. I have to say, before COVID hit, I used to sneak over to your meetings a couple times a year, and I always liked listening to Glenn's talks on what's blooming. I always really love that. So thank you for that. That's pretty cool.
Thank you,
So
Paul.
yeah, I bring you greetings from the Portland Metro, the neighboring club, Portland Metro Beekeepers. I got booted up to president. I don't know exactly how that happened.
Oh, wow.
but these things happen. And it's fun to be able to do some collaborative stuff. It was Amanda Shaw came over and spoke at our club just before COVID hit. And Cheryl and I got to work together a year, 2 years ago at the state meeting. And so that was a lot of fun. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to talk about queen rearing, kind of a little bit about me, just so you know how I ended up where I'm at. I'm kind of a bee nut, like I think a lot of us are. I started beekeeping when I was 12 years old, did bees for about 10 years, and then quit to go to school and do my training. Practiced ophthalmology in Portland for almost 30 years. Started beekeeping again about 25 years ago, and been busy doing it since. I just this summer, I just finished the Master Beekeeper program, so that was fun. I'll give a shout out to anybody out there that's interested in doing the Master Beekeeper program. It's a wonderful program. And through part of that, so I'm a hobbyist beekeeper. I usually keep about right around 15 hives, 15 colonies, and I like to keep a variety of different ones. Most of mine are Langstroth hives, but I have top bar and keep what's called an AZ hive, if you're familiar with that. It's a Slovenian, what they call AZ hive. And I also, probably my favorite hive is I have an indoor observation hive that I love. It's in our bedroom. So, my wife loves me to let me keep that in there. So anyway, there was a number of reasons why I started keeping queens. So let me share the screen here and let's get to that. All right, can you guys all see that okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Good. Yeah, okay. So there's a number of reasons why would you want to raise queen bees? First of all, I wanted to become a more sustainable beekeeper. It was, keeping 15 colonies or so, I was always, not always, but a lot of times buying queens. And I thought, I really want to try and raise my own so that I don't have to keep doing that. I also was concerned about queen quality. I really wanted more locally adapted queens. And, when you would buy queens, some of the time they'd be great and other times, they wouldn't. And, they probably came from California or Hawaii or somewhere like that. They didn't come from the Pacific Northwest. So I really wanted more local queens if I could. And I wanted a reliable source. Sometimes, you need a queen and you just can't get one, or it's going to take a week or two, or you have to, pay the shipping charge for one queen or a couple queens. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Another thing is, for me, the two things were combined was trying to control swarming and control the number of colonies I have. If you've been doing this long enough, it's real easy to get more and more bees because, come April, March, and in that time period, and the colonies are booming. If you wanted to keep them from swarming, you've got to do something, either split them or do something, and so, or otherwise it would be swarming. And so, rather than keep catching all the swarms or splitting them, I went to queen rearing, and I'll explain how that all fits into this. And also, just saved a lot of money to raise your own queens. And it's a lot of fun. If you've never done it, it seems, it's not that difficult to do, and it's really quite enjoyable to do, and you do get all those benefits by raising your own queens. So why do honeybees create new queens? Well, there's really three reasons that'll drive bees to make a new queen. The first is their natural swarming tendency. Of course, they're going to raise a queen. They're going to raise lots of queens when they need to swarm. If something's wrong if they detect or feel like detect something wrong with the queen, for whatever reason, they'll supersede. And then lastly, if they lose a queen, they have to be able to make a new queen. And so it's those three things: the swarming, supersedure, and emergency are the ways honeybees create new queens. So there's a number of ways you can go about rearing or creating queens. And they kind of fall into two major categories: non-grafting and grafting. So we'll talk a little bit about the non-grafting here first, and then we'll go into the grafting. Kind of one of the simplest ways to do it would be to just take colonies that are beginning to rear swarm cells. You could take that and split your colony, take a frame that has the swarm cell in it. Let's see, I think I have so here's a picture of one. This actually, the queen's already, emerged from most of these cells you can see down here, but generally a lot of them on the bottom of a frame in a colony that's very congested. And you can take those, put that in a nuc with a couple other frames, and you've got a new queen. The only caveat to that is that if you keep doing that, all beehives are going to want to swarm. I mean, that's a natural part of what bees do. But if you select for bees that want to swarm, you definitely, there is a tendency to some bees do tend to swarm more than others. So if each year you're constantly taking swarm cells to make your queens, over time you're going to have, you may end up with colonies that are a lot more likely to swarm. So that's one of the non-grafting ways. There's a whole variety of these queen rearing kits that you can buy. They go by a variety of different names, Genter, Nicot, Easy Queen, Kuppelvar. There's a bunch of them out there. And what they consist of, they're all variations on a theme here. They consist of a box that you put in the frame, and I'll show you some other pictures, but the idea is that you put the queen in here, she's captive in here, and they have these little cups that you get the queen to lay the cell in, the eggs in. So you don't have to actually graft, because the queen's laying the eggs in the cells in these little cups. Then you put these cups in this cup and this one and that, and then you can put it on a grafting bar. So here's one in a frame where you put it in here. These cups, this is the back side of them, and the queen's on the other side. Once she's laid them, you pop these out, you fit them into here on the bars. This is kind of and then if you want, you can put these hair rollers over the top of them, so that if the queen emerges, she doesn't go, and the other ones haven't, she doesn't go and kill them all. So it's sort of a way of banking them slightly. Here's a picture of what that looks like. And then you'll go ahead, and then we're going to talk about, then you'll go ahead and put those into what we call the starter, and then through a finisher or builder colony. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is just showing the non-grafting portion of that. The Miller method, this is kind of a neat way. And if you're not interested in, if you only need a few queen cells, this is not a bad way to do it. This is kind of fun. I've done it several times. I've done it a number of times with this one. And this is a frame. You really want foundationless, if you can, honeycomb, because it's a lot easier. What you do is you cut it into various little V patterns. Then you put this in the colony of the queen that you want to grab, that you want to get your queens from. In other words, you pick your colony that you think, that has all the characteristics that you want, and you let her lay in here. And then when she's laid, then you take, you have to keep checking this, and when there's eggs along the edges here, then you can take this out and you can put this again into your starter and finisher, and again we'll talk about what all that is. But you can get the queens to make queen cells along the edges, and then you can cut this out and put it, or if there's a bunch of them, you can cut them out and put them into your mating nukes if you want. So this is kind of another non-grafting method, and it's a good way if you only need if you only want a few cells. Alley method is another way. You take similarly a piece of comb that's foundationless, and when there's eggs in it, you cut along the midrib right here. You cut a strip, and you take that strip and you rotate it 90 degrees and attach it to the bottom of some comb. And then you've got the eggs in there, and then again you'll put that in the starter and finisher. And another thing you should do is remove this shows an egg here, space, egg, space. You want to have room between the cells, because the queen cells are going to be much bigger. Some people will go every third on this, and that's also true with the Miller method. I should mention that you'd go every third. You want to take every third egg out of there. People take a little toothpick in there and just get rid of the eggs so that they're not too crowded, so they'll raise a queen. So those are a lot of the non-grafting methods. The grafting method really came about in the late 1800s. This is kind of, Gilbert Doolittle was sort of the guy that was originally credited with doing this, but actually he took a lot of people's work and put it together, and put together a manuscript he called Scientific Queen Rearing back in the 1889. And basically, in summary, what his method was, first of all, you want to select a queen mother, and these are terms we use: queen mother and drone mother. In other words, you got to think about the drones as well if you can. But the queen mother is the mother you're going to pick, who's going to have the eggs that the queen that you're going to rear are going to come from. And so there's certain traits, that there's traits, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that you might be looking for. Then you take and you graft. It's a manual grafting, and we'll talk about that, where you take very young larvae. They have to really be under 24 hours, and you put them into some type of a cup. You make either a wax cup or there's plastic cups, but you have to put them into a cup of some sort. Then you create a starter colony, which is generally it's a smaller colony with lots and lots of nurse bees, and it's queenless. And then finally you have what's called the finisher and builder colony. So this is what was his method. And let's go through what all I mean by that. Oh, and lastly, once you've created all these queen cells, you've got to put them somewhere. So you need to create mating nukes, and you'll put these mature queen cells just before they're about to hatch, or excuse me, about to emerge in the mating nukes. So, okay, what are some of the queen traits? These are sort of obvious things, you know. You want them to be gentle. It's nice for them to be gentle. You want good honey producers if you're interested in producing honey. Certainly having mite and disease resistant queens would be great. Locally adapted, meaning they're queens that have, you know, for a couple of generations at least have lived here is great. And if you know, a lower tendency to swarm is a good thing. Wintering well. Lower high propolis, depends on what you want. I kind of am now more of a believer in higher propolis bees, as we're finding how important propolis really is. It's a little bit more difficult to work with, but that's that. So anyway, let's look at what the grafting is all about. So this is a picture of a variety of different aged larvae. It's a little unusual. Normally, when you pull a frame, most of the larvae and stuff you see are generally of the same age, because usually the queen is rearing in that sort of a pattern. But this is, for demonstration purposes, is nice because it shows all kind of different ages. So can you see my pointer? Is it just me that sees my pointer? Can you see that moving around?
We can see it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is a large larva. That's way too big. You really want them just barely past the size of an egg. So here's one with an egg, and this one would probably be good. This one would be good. This is way too big already. These are way too big. This is too big. They've got to be just really right after the egg is eclosed or hatched. So pretty small. Here's some other pictures. Again, here's another egg in the upper left here. And this is probably an okay size. This is a good one. It's also nice if they have a lot of royal jelly around them. It makes it easier to graft from. This is too big. So I'm just showing you this to give you an idea of what size you're looking for. There's a variety of tools out there for picking up that larva and putting it into the cup that you're going to put it in. This is considered a Japanese grafting tool. This is a little duck quill. This one has a bamboo push rod on it. This has a plastic one. This is a German. They make these little stainless steel ones. Heck, I know a lot of people that use a toothpick and they just bite it and twist the end and flatten it out, and that works well too. So you got to kind of figure out what works best for you. I think these are probably the most commonly used, the Japanese variety. You'll also want really good magnification. This stuff is small and you really want to be able to see it well. I have these loupes I wear. Good strong pair of reading glasses would be helpful. And then really important is a nice bright light. I wear a real bright LED light on my forehead, and I like the LED because it's cool. You don't want to be getting the eggs and larvae heated up while you're doing this. Here are some of the various types of cups you can use. You can make them out of beeswax. You take a dowel and round out the end, and then you dip it in beeswax. A lot of people have looked into are there pesticides in the beeswax? And would that affect the queen? And you can purchase beeswax that is certified pesticide free if you want to do it this way. I'm currently not aware. I'd have to look that up to see where you get it. You could use your own, but honestly, there's a chance that you're going to have pesticides unfortunately, in our own beeswax. Probably the most common thing to use are these little plastic cups. This particular company is called JZBZ. And I don't know why, but it seems like they're the most popular. These little plastic cups, they have a little protrusion on the back that what you do is this is called a grafting bar. and you put the little cups in the grafting bar, okay? And then they fit into a frame. And this is the frame that's going to go into the hive once you've grafted. So I like to set up the grafting. This is a frame I pulled from one of my from my queen mother that, you know, you can't see it here, but these have all emerging, and right in here there's lots of young larvae that from the queen that laid. So it's nice to get a little board or something that you can set it up with. Get the bees off it. Go somewhere where you can be calm and relaxed. It's quiet. Adonia and I had a great conversation about what's the appropriate music to play when you're grafting. We were joking, but I like to play something calm and just relax and take my time and not be stressed out about it. If you also, the other thing is, if you're thinking about doing this, before you ever actually do it for real, do a practice day where you're not, where you just there's no time constraints, where you got plenty of time where you can practice and practice for a while first, so that when the day comes that you've got your colony all ready to do the actual grafting, that it's not the first time you've done it. So another thing that's real important, you see over here is a towel. You want a nice wet, moist towel, because these can desiccate, they can dry out real quick. So you want to keep your frames covered and your grafting bars covered when you're not actually grafting. So if Amanda was here, she would have it so that if you clicked on this, it would automatically go to the YouTube. But I'm going to stop, I'm going to turn this off a second and actually go to the YouTube page here a second. Here's, got to stop that. I know she would have this all figured out, but all right, let's see here. This is a great video. It's probably one of the better videos I've seen that actually show what you're doing. So here's the Chinese grafting tool, and you can see you go down with you catch it on the C shape, the curved side, and you slide right underneath it, and then you pick it up. And it looks real easy here, but it takes a bit of practice to get used to doing this. But this is a hard thing to film. It's hard enough to see. You got to kind of do it at an angle just to get it right. But you can get an idea of the size of the larva. You can see them getting underneath it. Try and get as much royal jelly as you can. If you damage it or flip it upside down, then go to another one. Don't, you know, it's not worth it. So I think there's a couple more on this one. And then, yeah, here's another good one. I also find that sometimes, especially when I was first doing it, I would go ahead and take like a toothpick and actually pull the wax comb away. You know, just you destroy the cell a little bit to one side, but then you had a little bit better angle to get in there. And I don't do that anymore so much, but when I was beginning to do it, that made it easier. So let's move on to, let me move it up a little bit here. This is now putting them into the little cups. And this is what that little plunger, that bamboo plunger, is all about. It pushes it off the end there. And you kind of want to get it centered in the middle of that cup. Some people will prime that cup with a little royal jelly ahead of time. I don't. I find that if you get a fair amount on there to begin with, and you don't wait around too long, they do fine. You can see why these could dry out. If you had this under a bright incandescent light and it took you an hour before you got it back to the colony, these could dry out. So you are on a little bit of a time constraint. You don't want to wait forever on that. But I thought that was a good video showing that. Let's see here. Back to here. Okay. Okay, so we selected our queen mother, we grafted them. We got to we create this what's called a starter colony. And what you're trying to remember, we talked about the 3 ways that bees rear queen, either from swarming, from supersedure, or emergency. We're
The idea of making your own queen cells can be a little bit intimidating for new beekeepers. I know it took me years to warm up to the idea. I was afraid I
think you
wouldn't be
left
able to
the,
stay on schedule.
YouTube
Keeping
video
a tight
playing in the
schedule is very
background.
important when you're making cells. And I was a little intimidated by the idea of grafting. Once I got started with it, it really didn't turn out to be quite as bad as I thought it would be. I learned the process that we use from a friend of mine, Chris Werner. He runs Indian
I
Summer
think
Honey
you
Farm,
left
and
the
he's a superb
YouTube
queen
video
producer. I
running.
spent about 3 or 4 days with him a long time ago, and he showed me his whole
Oh, that's
process.
my video still running.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
From
sorry.
beginning to
Yeah,
end,
no,
how they
that's
set
okay.
up their
I
timing
thought
boxes for
sorry
the
about
breeder,
that. Let me go turn that off.
how they graft, and how they set
Where
up their
is
cell
it?
builders. At first,
There. Sorry about that. I told you I needed Mandy. Okay, are we good now?
Yeah, we can see it again.
Okay, sorry. So the starter colony is queenless, and that's so you're depending on the emergency response. Okay, so what is a starter colony? There's a lot of ways you can do this. There's not one right way, but this is kind of the original way. I think Doolittle they used a box similar to a nuke box. Okay, and it doesn't have an entrance on it. It's got a little spacer on the bottom, or the box is just taller. They make it taller so that the frames, that there's a gap at the bottom, and they'll put a screen across the bottom, and there's room to put sponge down there with water so that they get a water source. Then you take, you're going to put that frame with the grafts right in the middle. And on one side, you're going to have a frame with as much pollen and bee bread in it as you can. And then the other side, you're going to have as much, a frame full of honey and nectar. And then you put in 2 other frames of bees. And what you do is you shake as many nurse bees as you can into this. And it's very resource intensive. I mean, you have to have a number of colonies to do this. You want to get it packed with nurse bees. And then you close it, you put the lid on, and you put it somewhere where it's not going to get too hot or too cold, because there's no entrance on this thing. They're ventilated, but the bees can't get in and out. But you've created a queenless situation, and the bees are just, they're like, we need a queen, and they've got all the resources they need, and you only keep the frame in here for about 24 hours. So if you look at it 24 hours, this is sort of what you're hoping to find. So here's these little JZBZ cups, and you can see it looks kind of yellow, but that's really white royal jelly in there. And they've started to build the comb around the queen. Down here in the middle on the blue one, you can see it's a little bit darker than the one next to it. That's because it's not full of royal jelly. That one didn't take at the bottom, but the one to the left of it did. And so that's what you're hoping to have happen. Now, that starter colony because it's not bringing resources in, it cannot maintain the continued growth of those queen cells. So it only is there for the first day. Then the bees are moved in what's called a finisher or a builder colony. And that is either a queenless or a queen right. Usually, it depends. If you're raising lots and lots of queens, they build these builder colonies, but the finisher usually has a queen in it. And I got this from Randy Oliver, and again, I'm showing you, this is what the Doolittle method's about. So you have a queen with the brood, and you put her in the bottom with the queen excluder. Then you put your frame with the queen cells in the middle, again with pollen on one side, larva and honey next to it, and you feed it. You put open larvae in the upper box to draw the nurse bees up in there, and then this is where the bees stay until they're about 10 days after grafting, which is about 2 days or so before they emerge. And that's called the finisher. Well, that's pretty complex. There's a lot to do with all that, and as a hobbyist beekeeper, and with only a few hives, that's hard to do that. And so there's a much less resource, less intensive method of using it called the cloakboard method. And as a hobbyist, if you're thinking about doing queen rearing, I would recommend you look into this. And I'm going to go through all this, but there are two really good references. If you Google Sue Colby and put Cloakboard in, or Rusty Burlew, her honeybee suite, you go to that and you put in her search Cloakboard. Both of those have really great descriptions of all this. So if you lose me on some of this, you can go there, and they've got great. So it's Sue Colby and Rusty Burlew, and just go to Google and put Cloakboard, and it'll walk you through this. So what is the Cloakboard? The advantage is it requires a whole lot less equipment and resources. You use one strong colony and it does everything. It's the starter, the finisher, and it gets returned back to its normal status. It takes about 14 days that it's being used for this whole process. Otherwise, it goes back to being just a regular hive 14 days later. So that's kind of a neat thing. And so it works really well for hobbies beekeeper. So this is what the Cloakboard looks like. It's a board that goes between your boxes, and it has a queen excluder built into it. Then it's got these little rabbets or grooves along the side so that you could slide a metal sheet in there. But there's enough space right here that this is wide enough or deep enough that it can become an entrance. Okay, so that's without the metal sheet. You can see the metal sheet as you're starting to slide it into place. And there you can see it completely cuts off, the space between, it shuts everything off. So I'll explain how that works here now. So again, if you lose me on this, those two resources are great, but I'm going to go through this kind of slow, and hopefully it'll make some sense to you. So what do you do when you use the Cloakboard? Okay, the first thing you do is you take the bottom board and rotate it around 180 degrees and close the entrance. So the entrance is on the back of the hive now, and you close it. Okay. Then you make sure you put the queen in the lower box. You move as much uncapped larva into the upper box as you can. You place that frame of nectar, a spacer frame and a pollen frame like you saw in that starter, centrally in the upper box. And then you put the Cloakboard between the two of them, but without the tray there. Okay? And then you feed them. So let's kind of go, okay, why did you do all that? What's the point of all that? And then you close the hive and let it sit. So what's happened is that the queen is now sequestered in the lower box, okay? The bees can go up through the queen excluder. The queen can't, but the bees can, and they can go out through the upper entrance that you just created with the Cloakboard. By having all the uncapped larvae in the upper box, all the nurse, not all of them, but a lot of the nurse bees move up into the upper box to tend to the open larvae. And the field bees are trying to get in the old entrance down at the bottom, but they only have to go 8 inches up higher, and there's the new entrances between the box. And that's why you want to let it sit for a day or so that they can reorient to it. So let me show you this. So here's, this is a spacer frame I have. Here's a frame, you have to trust me, this is full of bee bread and pollen, and this is full of honey. And here is the Cloakboard. You can see the bottom board's been rotated so the bees can't, the bees can't get in. Ignore the fact that the tray is already in there. At this point, you wouldn't have the tray in there, okay? But the bees would still be using that new entrance. Have I lost you here? You guys following me so far? Okay. And then the back entrance you have closed. Again, this one I actually have it open, but we're going to open it shortly. Okay, so now after you've waited a day, you slide the metal tray into the slot above the queen occluder, and you open the back entrance of the lower box. And then you wait another day. Well, what did you do now? When you do this, you've effectively created 2 colonies. The bottom colony is queen-right, and then you have a queenless upper colony. The field bees now in the lower colony can no longer get out through the upper entrance, but they figure out how to get out through the back. But as field bees will do, when they come back, a lot of them are going to go back to the front entrance because that's what they're used to. And so now you've got this very crowded upper colony, and it's perfect as a starter colony. It's full of a lot of field bees, but full of a lot of nurse bees. And that's, so it's set. It's essentially what that starter was doing. So you remove the spacer and you place the graft and you wait 24 hours. And so now the top colony is now a queenless starter colony, and hopefully they'll build the cells and give you this. Okay, a day after that, then you remove the metal tray, you block the lower entrance again, and you leave this thing alone for 10 days. Well, 10 days from grafting. And so once again, so what have you done now? So now you're back to a single queen-right, but now it's queen-right colony, but now it's a finisher builder colony with bees actively coming and going. The queen in the bottom can't get up to the grafts, and they're using the cloak board entrance again. And then the last step is at about 10 days after grafting, you take the mature queen cells to mating nukes, and then you take the cloak board out, rotate the bottom board and put it back into its regular position. So it's been about 14 days after you first did it, it's back in its regular configuration. So I know that's a lot of kind of little maneuvering things. It seems complex at first, but then once you've done it once or twice, it's really not that big a deal. And it's cool because you can use the one colony to do everything. So getting back to colony creep, I know we talked about that before. This is what really helps me with colony creep, because come mid-April when the colonies are busting, I can create all these small mating nukes and relieve the congestion out of all my other colonies. And then I put all these mature queen cells and I make a bunch of mating nukes. And there's a whole lot of variety of ways you can do mating nukes. I've never done these mini mating nukes. But you can take a regular deep and split it into 3, or you can buy these ones that are 4 nukes. So this is sort of what I do. I took some old deeps and put dividers in them and turned these into three frame nukes with an entrance here, an entrance here, and an entrance up at the top. And you can kind of see, I would do it a little differently now. I'd make these boards go up higher so that the queen can't accidentally get over to the other side. I like painting my entrances. It's fun. My daughter and I have a great time doing it. And I think it helps for virgin queens or returning queens for mating get back to the right place. So this is out at one of my apiaries, some of these mating nukes out there. And I do like to feed them because they'll go through a lot right then. And you just take here's one of those JZBC cells, and you just stick it into the side of the comb between the frames, or you can just hang it between them too, and let the queen emerge. If I have more queen cells than I do mating nukes, which happens sometimes, I have this frame here that is essentially for banking queens. I put the cell that's about to emerge and stick them in here, and so when she emerges, she's stuck in this little cage here, and that's kind of nice because then I can see if the other queens successfully mate or if they emerge or not, and if they don't, then I can take these queens and use them for that. What's nice about raising your own queens at this point is that you can watch how they do over the next month or two, and some of them do great and some of them are so. But what happens is you get to pick the very best of the best, and then you can use those to requeen your colonies, and that's what I find really helpful, because it's hard to get really good local queens, and you have by doing this, you have the chance to watch and see how they do, and you can pick your very best queens. If a hive does swarm, you've got a new nuke you can put in, you can use to strengthen it in time for the honey flow if you want. And I'm a really big fan of keeping nukes around. That's how if you lose a queen in the summer, you don't have to order one. You've got a queen, that's good. And then in the fall, I'll winter the nukes through, and come like March, you open a colony and the queen's there, but she's got a really poor pattern or became a drone layer. Well, and you can't get queens anywhere. Well, if you've got a nuke, it's real easy to take care of it. So it's all that all kind of blends into how I how I beekeep. Lastly, the thing I would say is timing is real important in all this. And so this is my version of it, but there's lots of these out there. These queen calendars, queen rearing, what day what's going on, what you do, this is what's happening with the queen cells, and this is what you need to be doing at certain times and on what day. And, for me, I find having that real helpful, so that when I do decide to raise queens, I look at my calendar, hey, am I going to be gone that weekend? Okay, well, I probably shouldn't graft on Tuesday then, because Sunday the following, I need to be there to do something. So you can kind of plan things out. So yeah, so that's kind of a quick run through as how I do things. Do you have questions about any of that?
I have a few questions, but I'll let other people speak up first before I inundate you. Do you find that one of the methods produces better queens than the others? This is probably pretty objective, but aside from ease of the method, do you see a better quality queen coming out of one or the other?
I don't know that I can say for sure on that one. I like to have enough of them. When you put them into the mating nukes, you're lucky, if 70% of them successfully mate and get back. And of those 70% that get back and mate, what percentage of those are going to be really good queens a month later? I had queens that I thought were really good queens, and they supersede right away, and I'm not sure why. So you get to watch them, and so it's sort of more of a little bit of a numbers game. If I start out with 15 or 20 queens, I might end up with 7 or 8 that are like, these are really good. So to get that many queen cells, you would either graft or have to use one of the queen rearing things. I don't think you'd get enough doing the Miller method to make that work.
Paul, we have some questions coming in on the chat, so I'm going to read them to you as we go here.
Okay.
So Kevin is asking, can you explain the Miller method a little bit more?
Okay. All right, let's go back to that a second. Let's see here. So, okay, so we've talked about the starter finisher whole business a little bit here, so now it may make some more sense. So if you take this, let's say you want to raise queens doing the Miller method. You find the colony that you want that has the queen that you want to take your queen cells from, okay? You put this in that colony and wait until the queen, you take and you cut it in these little V's. A lot of times they make them much bigger. I made these a little smaller, but these were drone cells up here and I wanted to stay in the worker cell area. And the idea is that you've got this space underneath, okay? And you put it in there, and sometimes by the time she's laid eggs in here, they'll have filled this in with other combs, so you may have to cut it back out again until you've got it, till these cells right on the edge here have just eggs in them, or perhaps 1-day-old larvae, but you don't want them older than that, okay? And then you go through and you take out about every other or every third egg, okay? So instead of grafting or buying one of the queen rearing kits or whatever, you now have the eggs right there on the edges of this, on the edge of the comb. At this point, if you were using the cloak method, you would put this in that upper box in the middle space, as opposed to the graft bar that you grafted, okay? And then everything else from that point is the same until day number 10. On day number 10, if you had the grafting bar, you'd pry those little JZBZ cups off and put them into your mating nukes. Here, you'd kind of have to see where the queen cells are and carefully cut around them to cut them out and then place them into your mating nukes. So hopefully, hopefully that'll explain that a little bit better.
So Paul, just to follow up, you still have to place this frame in a starter.
Yeah, because you need a queenless, what's stimulating the queens to raise queen cells is the fact that they do not have a queen. It's an emergency. They've got not only do they don't have a queen, but they've got lots and lots of nurse bees. They've got lots of pollen. They've got lots of honey. You are trying to stimulate them as hard as you can to get them to raise queens. And that's what gives you the nice, big, fat, huge queen cells of these nice, strong queens. I was talking to Sue Colby, and she was telling me that you could have the best genes in the world for your queen, but if they weren't reared under real optimum conditions where they had lots of food and the bees were really, really trying hard, she would rather take a queen that had poorer genetics but was fed better when they were developing, because there are a lot of times, I mean, that's a lot of what makes a good queen, is that they're taken well care of at this stage. I don't know if that exactly answered your question or not.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, the next question that we have from our chat is from Glenn, and he's asking, how do you get the queens out of the bank?
Yeah, it's a little tricky. I found I hold them upside down, and I'm used to I grab them as they come out. I started first and now I'm pretty comfortable with that. Before I did that, I would go into my bathroom and shut the door. So if they got out and flew around, I would have a fighting chance of finding them. But yeah, that's how I did that.
Okay, so our next question, Cheryl asks, do you end up with a lot of extra queens? And if so, what do you do with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it's amazing, because if you graft, it's amazing the attrition that happens. So let's say you graft 30 cells, and if you've done well, maybe 70, 80%, sometimes 90, so let's say you end up with 22, 23 queen cells. And of those 23 queen cells, maybe 20 of them emerge. And then of those 20, 15 of them mate. And of those 15 that mate, 10 or 11 of them are really good, maybe, or some of them, then you can take some of the queens in the queen bank and try and replace the ones that you lost. So it's funny you have to kind of figure out how many you want, and figure you're going to lose probably 60%, 70% of them by the time you get to where you really got a good queen. But do I have more queens than I need to? Yeah, that happened a couple of times. And so this is one of the beautiful things about bee clubs. I put the word out, I've got queen cells. It was easy to get rid of them. So that was fun. In fact, it's a project I think we're going to do this year at Portland Metro. Everybody's interested in getting queens by around mid-April, early April, because it's really hard to get queens, but that's when you want to do all your splits. So as a club, we're gonna raise queens for the club, and people have volunteered their colonies to be the cloakboard colonies, and we're looking for there's a debate as to what we're going to use for queen mothers. And in this whole thing, I didn't really talk about a really important part of all this is the drones. In the city of Portland, we don't really have much control over that, because I'm really depending on all my neighbors to have good drones, because that's who my virgin queens are going to mate with, and vice versa. If you're, some of the commercial people or people that are more isolated, they'll raise drone mothers too. That's a whole nother part of it. So that's sort of how we're getting some of the local flavor to the bees, is that we're depending on our neighbors' drones. So I don't know, Cheryl, did that answer your question? Hopefully so.
Oh, Cheryl said, yes, it does answer her question. So the next question is from Ryan, and he says, what months are generally the best for local queen mating?
Yeah, I mean, probably your very best queens are May and June. Yeah, I would say we start earlier. I start early just because of the need to have queens in mid-April. So I'll graft usually this 3rd or 4th of April, maybe a little earlier. It depends on what the weather's looking like. You know, you've got to have enough mature drones for it to make sense. And, you know, the old adage is when there's a lot of purple-eyed drone larvae, the timing's right that they'll be mature about the time that the queens mature. So, you know, drones take a lot longer to mature than queens do, you know, 2 weeks more. And to have enough of them out at the drone congregation areas and to be warm enough. If you graft too early, she may not get mated real well. So, you know, you can talk, there's a number of people that I work with that graft even earlier, but I don't. I kind of start at the beginning of April, and it gets harder as it starts, when you start getting into dearth, and the flow starts letting up, they're not as excited about raising a queen. So, yeah. How long can you keep queens in the bank? So it's a little different because these are virgin queens. These aren't mated queens, okay? And depending on who you talk to, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, if you start waiting any longer than that to have them mate, there's, you know, the quality can go down. And again, there's some debate as to how long that is. I usually, you know, give my mating nukes about a week or 10 days and go and take a look. You can usually, you know, that's the nice thing about these nukes. They're small enough, even if it's a virgin queen, you're usually able to see if they're there or not. And, or you can tell if the queen emerged, and if they didn't, or they didn't mate, and the weather's been good, then a lot of times I'll put one of those virgin queens in there. But a week to 2 weeks, you should be fine. You start getting longer than that, it's sort of questionable how long they'll keep. And the question I saw, do I requeen annually? It ends up being that way almost. I like, so for my queen mothers, I really like queens that have been around for a couple of years if possible, because that tells me something about them. You know, if you've got a 2-year-old queen anymore, that's pretty amazing. You know, the queens, they're superseding pretty frequently, a lot more than they used. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have queens, I would keep them, you know, at year, this is cheap. At year 4, I was trying to decide whether I was going to requeen them or not. But that just doesn't happen anymore. You know, if you get a queen to last a year, there's something really good about her, you know, especially 2 winters. If she's gone through 2 winters, and their mite counts are good and they're pretty gentle. That's who I usually, a lot of times, will pick to be my queen mother, or I'll pick a couple of them. Sometimes I'll pick more than one. I'm looking at a Caucasian queen this year that I might use as a queen mother. So,
Do you trace, or I guess keep track of the queens you breed and the traits you're seeing and stuff like that
yeah, I do.
down to the
I keep-
succession?
I try to, you know, I have notes and keep track of you know, how they do, and yeah, so I kind of I try to pick my better queens for, you know, whichever one seems to have done the best.
Mm-hmm.
That, or if there's 2 that are both really pretty good, I'll graft some. That one frame you saw, the yellow JZBZs and blue JZBZs, the color I use was for the queen. You know, the yellow was one queen, the blue was a different queen. So that was one of the ways I would keep track. So
Those JZBZ cups are plastic, I assume, and do they ever reject the cups? Like I know some foundation, or like plastic foundation, they take a longer time to build on and everything. Do they ever do the same thing with those?
not that I'm aware, but what I do, and the queen breeders tell me I'm crazy, but I do it anyway, is I put honey in them beforehand. And you remember I told you I put a spacer in there the day before? That's what I put in there. I put them with the cups in there so that they have to go in there and clean and polish all the cells beforehand. And then I pull them out when I do my grafting. Does that really help? I don't know, but I do it. Because for that same exact reason.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I was going to try the wax ones, but the problem is unfortunately our wax isn't all that pure. I mean, if you do studies and look at how much chemicals are in our wax, it's not awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to find pure, you know, beeswax that they've tested, they know is free of pesticides and stuff. So yeah, it's a hard, I don't know the answer on that one. So
With the Doolittle method, you graft, right, and you use the hatched larva. Is there a reason why you don't use it when they're in the egg stage? Do
Yeah,
you
because
purposely wait for it to hatch?
it's way too fragile. You'd break it. You damage
Mm.
it. People tried, and it just, you try to pick up that egg is so fragile that it just you can't pick it up and successfully do it. And if you go more than a day or two, then the queens aren't as of good quality because they need to start feeding them all the royal jelly right away from day one as much as you can. So it really is important. And then, the other thing is if you graft one larva that's 3 or 4 days old and the rest of them are 1 day old, they'll turn it into a queen, but it'll emerge 2 days earlier and it'll go through your colony and kill all
Yeah.
the other queen cells. And so you really, and that's a bummer when that happens, that you've lost the whole grafting. So, it's important to make sure they're all pretty young. That's why some of them have those, you saw those hair rollers on some of those ones. You can get guards also for just regular grafting so that if they do hatch, or if they do emerge, you can contain them so they won't go and kill all the rest of the bees. The one thing I didn't mention is that when you go to put the grafts into that top box, you do want to go through all the other frames and make sure they didn't create a queen cell somewhere else, because sometimes that exact same can happen. They can create emergency queen cell out of an older larva, and so you do want to go through all those cells, all those frames real quick, before you put the graft in. So.
When you graft them, so you've found the frame, right? You're in the hive. You pull out that frame, and you've taken it inside now, and you're gonna take some of those larvae. What I guess from the time you pull out that frame from the hive until you put it back into your starter hive, what's the time, like what time frame should you shoot for? I guess you're saying an hour is way too long, but is
No, I don't think that's too long if you keep it covered. It's all
okay.
about moisture. If you keep it covered with the towel and everything,
Mhm.
and then keep your grafts covered, I mean, the whole process, it depends how many you're grafting. And when you first start, you're slower at it than after you've done it for a little while. And so that's why it's great to practice it beforehand when it doesn't matter, when it's not for real, because then you'll feel a lot more comfortable when it comes time to actually doing it. So, probably, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe half hour,
Yeah.
not that long. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It really is. You should try it. If you think about it, you should try it.
Yeah, I actually think I'm gonna try it this year. It's my first time, so I actually just have one more question, and
Okay.
then we can end. So I don't know if it's just an old beekeeping wise tale or something, but I've heard that you can crush up queens, right, and put them in alcohol to use for queen lure. When they are virgin queens, does that still apply? So if you've got 10 extra queens, is that still work at that point for something like that?
So my understanding is that, a virgin queen is a completely different thing than a mature mated queen.
Mhm.
When a queen mates, there's physiologic changes that happen real quickly over a very short period of time. And I believe the production of 9-ODA, which is the main chemical you're talking about, goes up way higher once they've mated. They do produce it when they're virgins because that's how the drones find them, at the drone congregation areas.
Mhm.
So I think it would work, but I think you would get, my thought is you'd get a lot more if you had mated queens. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm pretty sure.
Kind of makes sense, I would think, but yeah. Well, awesome.
All right.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. I really enjoyed it. I think other people did as well. And yeah, let's stay in touch. Keep us informed on what you guys are doing over there at Portland Metro, and happy beekeeping this season.
Yeah,
So
it's nice to do some collaborating. That's really nice. We've been doing a little bit with the Tualatin Valley group a little bit too. So
oh, great.
it's nice.
Awesome.
It's kind of one of the weird things about COVID that, we're doing all these Zoom meetings now, and it enables us to do stuff that we didn't do beforehand. So I guess that's one positive thing from all this. So
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun to interact with our other local groups. So yeah.
Cool.
All
Awesome.
right. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone for joining. Bye.